I feel like I'm at an Oscar for nerds. Okay, my name is Joe Hall, and today I'm talking about rethinking information architecture for SEO and content marketing. And really what I'm talking about mostly for this talk is a problem that I've seen over the last couple of years. And I'm sure if you're an SEO, you've probably come across this issue as well. And that is that I come in contact with a lot of clients that have really great SEO, okay? They have Chuck Norris SEO. They've got great technical structures. They've got phenomenal markup. Their server does great. They have a decent backlink profile. And not only that, but they also do a really good job with content marketing as well. But for some strange reason, they aren't getting traffic or rankings, okay? And they might be getting traffic and rankings in some areas, okay? Like maybe parts of their blog are doing really well. Or maybe they're getting rankings in areas that they don't really need to get rankings in, okay? But their primary product pages or their service pages or the pages that talk about their company aren't ranking like they want them to. And so when a client comes to me with this issue, a lot of times I'm like this guy right here. I think, well, that's bad information architecture. And I feel like that guy too, because a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? You know, that makes no sense to me at all. So today I'm going to talk about how we can, one, identify bad information architecture, and then two, how we can redefine it to start building sites that rank better. So what exactly is information architecture? It's basically just the structural design of shared information environments. And so what does that mean for us in a web setting? This is typically what we see. We see a loose structure of different page types. And this is how we've been building websites for the last 20 years or so. The problem with this is that, as you can see, these are not really anything to do with marketing, okay? These are page types. And this is how a developer will lay out the structure of a site. This is problematic for us as content marketers because this doesn't help us at all promote the entire site or the entire domain. For example, we have a completely separate section for the blog. And if you're doing content marketing, that means that all of your traffic and links are going to an isolated section of your website. That is problematic for us. I'll show you why. So bad IA simply means that you'll have an increased likelihood for duplicated content and taxonomies, right? So if you have a product category for tennis shoes and you have a blog category for tennis shoes, that doesn't make any sense, okay? We need to try to figure out a way to bring those taxonomies together. It also, because of that, creates poor internal linking. You might have a ton of links pointing to a piece of content, but if those links are not being transferred onto the pages that matter, like your product pages or pages that you want to rank, that link equity is pretty much wasted. Distributed topic authority. This is really important right now, okay? Google is employing lots of machine learning algorithms and lots of natural language processing, and they can understand the main topics of your site, and if they're all distributed across the domain, it makes it very difficult for them to understand what your site is about. Confusing or incomplete navigation, and an overall lower user experience. So information architecture has a lot to do with the entire marketing aspect of your site. So we're back to this slide, right? How do SEOs traditionally fix a problem like this? Well, many SEOs will recommend doing something like an internal linking structure or strategy, right? And that's good. That helps in some cases. But in the end, it's just a Band-Aid because you have to constantly work on that. You have to constantly build internal links. You have to constantly think about where your link equity is and that kind of thing. And some SEOs will recommend moving content, okay? And sometimes that works as well. But the difficult part about that is, one, putting together a successful plan on how that's going to be executed without losing rankings. by doing things like redirections and that kind of thing. And also, it's hard to find out where exactly you should put the content. And then some are even tempted to get involved in unnatural links or unnatural link profiles, which can get you in a lot of trouble. And the reason that happens is because a lot of SEOs will look at, or a lot of business owners will look at their content marketing budget and they'll see, gosh, we've spent so much money on content marketing, we're not getting the rankings we want, so I'll just buy 5,000 links for 10 bucks and point them at our product pages. That's horrible. Do not do that. That's going to really get you in a lot of trouble. So all of these are just Band-Aids that really solve a problem that shouldn't exist to begin with. And so what I want to talk about today is how we can design kick-ass information architectures. In order to do that, I must tell you a story. And I'm an expert only at two things, and that's SEO and wheelchairs. And the only reason I'm an expert at wheelchairs is because I've used one my whole life, okay? So I'm gonna tell you a quick story. When I was a kid, my first chair was a manual wheelchair. And there's two different types of wheelchairs you understand. There's basically manual wheelchairs and electric wheelchairs like I have now. But when I was a kid, I used a manual wheelchair mostly. And I did that up until I was about 13, I think in 8th grade. And I got my first power chair when I was in 8th grade. And it was amazing, right? But guess what happened? I was so awkward. At 13, I was already awkward, right? But having a power chair, I became even more awkward because this is what would happen. I would go like this. I would go very slow like that, right? But if I wanted to turn, I'd have a complete stop, and I would do a 90-degree angle like this. It took me forever to get anywhere. It was horrible. My friends hated it. They were like, God, you're so awkward, I hate this. It was like for a week, they hated it, you know? So a week went by after I got my first power chair, and my dad took me to the mall. And when you're 13 in the early 90s, the mall is where you have to hang out, right? But for me, because I was such a nerd, the place I really enjoyed going was Radio Shack, you know? But my dad parked over by Kmart, okay? And so to get to Radio Shack, I had to go all the way across the mall, right? But I was so excited to get there, but I did something different. Instead of focusing on what I was doing, I looked forward, and I focused on where I was going. And I focused on my direction and my destination. And the reason I tell you this story today is because in order to design successful information architectures, we need to focus on where we are going and less about what we're doing. And what that means, basically, is that where you are going is called marketing. And what we are doing, effectively, is web development. I'm not saying throw web development out. That's how I got started. But what you need to do is look for that sweet spot, right in between the middle, between marketing and web development, and find SEO. So let's start off with some main ideas, okay? When you're building an information architecture, you need to start thinking about main concepts that define an organization. And these can be popular ideas within an industry or broad user intent. These main ideas will be the foundation of how the site is structured. So we'll put them right there. The second thing you want to do, and this is something that's going to happen over the lifetime of the site, is start to develop supporting content. And when I say supporting content, you know, we often think about blog posts, you know, but it can be really anything. Any page on the site can be supporting content. This includes product pages. This includes anything, really. It can be blog posts, articles, evergreen content, and you should really focus on targeted user intent and focus on your sales funnel. So when you think about a traditional sales funnel, you're thinking about, you know, you're thinking about awareness, building awareness. You're thinking about comparison or education of your product, and you're thinking about a conversion point. Those are the three main sections of most search sales funnels. That should be included within your supporting content. And that would go, pressed the wrong button here. That would go right below that. So after you've developed your supporting content, you're going to want to think about your conversion points. And these can be product pages, lead generation forms, user signups, and those need to fit inside that same main category section, okay? And after that is completed, we can put them down here. And then we want to start thinking about our main taxonomy. Now, the main taxonomy is actually one of the easiest things because you can leverage those main ideas to get started. They can define main navigation, they can influence URL structures, they can develop a category hierarchy, and they can influence content development. It's very important that you think about how your main ideas and your main taxonomy will work in with the rest of the objectives of the site, because it will be how the rest of the site is structured going forward. After you've done that, this would be our main taxonomy up here, up at the top. And this can influence your main navigation as well. It doesn't have to, but it probably should. The second thing we're going to want to think about is, this is the main taxonomies in action. This is kind of interesting. We'll see here, this is the query is furniture, and we'll see that positions 1, 2, and 3 in organic are all main taxonomy sections. Now, of course, everything above those organic listings are ads and the local 7-pack, and I can't do a presentation without complaining about Google. So this is kind of bullshit, to be honest with you. Like, really, is this cool for us? No, it's not. So if you really need to stay competitive, I recommend sticking with a good understanding of your information architecture. Otherwise, if you're not in the top 3, nobody's going to go any further down. And that actually was below, way below the fold on my computer. So next, we need to talk about supporting taxonomies. And these are things that can define the relationship between content in separate sections. And so if you understand how a blog works, or you ever used a blog, you might identify things like tags and other aspects of your content that can show a connection between other pieces. And because of that, it helps grow internal linking organically. It can act as a secondary navigation. So some folks will use these actually as a sub-navigation, or they might use them as a navigation within your sidebar. These definitely can grow and change over time. So this is the kind of thing where you want to utilize your supporting taxonomy if you're introducing new content that's not so much related specifically to a main idea, but you still want to tag it, or you still want to keep that content organized in some way. And they would go down here, and as you can see, it's kind of randomized how they're connected, because these are the sections of the site that connect all the other parts together. And what's cool about this, it's becoming much, much easier to create supporting taxonomies. We have all these new tools now, and these are natural language processing companies. And what these do, you can tie into their APIs, and they will automatically go through your content library and tag the main concepts or ideas for each piece of content. And that's very effective when we're building a supporting taxonomy, because it can really easily show you the relationships between all the various pages on your site. And I'll draw special attention to the one below called Cloud Natural Language API. That is the API from Google, and that API actually is open to the public. And what's great about that is that it runs on the same natural language processing engine that Google uses. They talked about it recently. They call it parsing McParseface, I think. But anyways, that's the exact same API that they use. So I'm really excited about that one. The other three have been around for a while, and they're phenomenal. All of them are really great. So let's take a look at that in action. So check this out. The query here is dog leashes, and we can see that positions 1 and 2 are responsible for from the supporting taxonomies. And so it's important to understand that, a dog leash may not be a main idea of a site, right? But it's definitely a supporting piece of content or supporting taxonomy along with it. So the final thought, this is a final thought here, is this tweet from Rand. This is a very popular tweet from him. The best way to sell something is don't sell anything at all. Earn the awareness, respect, and trust of those who might buy. And it seems kind of abstracted, but for me, building the right information architecture should aid in that pursuit because it increases your user experience, it increases a amount of respect because all your content is in the right position. It definitely increases awareness because your sites will start to rank better, and trust as well. Thank you very much. My name is Joe Hall. Thank you.
Joe, thank you very much. I'm being sent questions.
Okay, cool.
As we speak. Thank you for submitting everything.
Send your questions. We have a lot of time left, so yeah.
Someone asked, our company uses a lot of one-off landing pages with a short lifespan. Where should you out these types of pages in the infrastructure?
Okay, so that's a good question. One-off landing pages. There was I think about a year ago, Google mentioned that they were going to be more aggressive around something called doorway pages, or doorway kind of aspects of a site. And for those that don't understand, a doorway page is a page that is created specifically just for SEO, right? And it may be found outside of the main navigation. It may not be part of the site, right? So my recommendation is if you're doing these one-off landing pages, to figure out a way to integrate those pages as much as possible into your existing architecture. And that may mean like creating a special section within your main navigation. It might mean developing a specific tag category. But whatever it may be, make sure that you're including these landing pages in your overall like internal linking structure. And it may seem like maybe it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to put those in your main navigation. That might be true. But if you're trying to avoid some type of Google filter or penalty, it would make sense then.
Okay. Someone wanted a bit more detail about why having your blog in a separate section is bad.
Yes.
They want some justification on this.
Very good question. Okay, so I get it. I understand. People love blogs, right? People love content marketing. They want to, produce their infographics or whatever. I don't know. But here's the thing, is that if you have one section, let's say that you have WordPress, for example, in a subdirectory, right? That's how it usually happens, okay? What happens then is that WordPress has its own taxonomy structure. It has its own kind of system, content management system, inside of its own directory. And so oftentimes what happens is you will do a stellar content marketing campaign, okay? And you'll attract tons of links and tons of visitors. And the value of those links and visitors stays on the blog. It doesn't transfer over to the other sections of the site. And like I mentioned earlier, I can't pull it up anymore. But anyways, as I mentioned earlier, doing things like internal linking and moving content, that can help fix that problem, but it's just a Band-Aid. And so we need to start growing sites that are not kind of partitioned off based on page type. We need to start putting content right alongside our product pages, or put content right alongside our lead generation forms. There's no reason we can't do all that together in the same sections. It's difficult because It might mean, looking at a different technology infrastructure outside of WordPress, but it's going to help in the long run.
Is there a technology answer that you've recommended to people?
Technology? No,
because when it comes to WordPress,
let's say if you're hardcore WordPress, and I love WordPress, and if you have a reasonably manageable product inventory, if you're selling products, you might want to look into something like WooCommerce, which is a kind of an e-commerce platform for WordPress. There's other ones out there that might be good. If you want to get outside of that, you might want to look at something like Drupal and think about, Drupal is great, but it's all about how the site is built, And so if you're going to build a site in Drupal, really think about having it laid out like I had before and not having a separate section just for the blog or just for content. Yeah.
You and Lauren Vaccarello can argue over Drupal versus WordPress because you and Lauren Vaccarello can argue about Drupal and WordPress. There's a few differences of opinion.
Yeah.
Someone had also followed up with a question about local topic authority, which you touched on.
Local topic authority?
Topical authority for pages.
Yeah. So is that the question? Just
specifically, the question was also, what is local topical authority?
There you go. So that's a great question, actually. So topic authority is simply having everything that's topical that you want to rank for in the same sections, right? So when Google was looking at your site, if you want to rank for, tennis shoes, okay? And, that's the only thing you want to rank for. But to build supporting content, you built a bunch of other stuff. You built stuff about athletes. You built a ton of other things. And you've got your authority about tennis shoes spread out across the entire site. It's hard for Google to make sense of what the site's actually about. So if you can integrate your content in a way that's segmented, and some people like to use the term silos. I'm not a fan of that term, but if you want to look at silos, that's kind of the direction that I'm talking in. You're going to want to try to organize your topics in ways that makes it very easy for Google to understand what you're trying to achieve with the website.
Perhaps a quite traditional SEO question.
Okay.
But someone had asked about just making sure you've got pages that are well optimized. That are well optimized. And what can we do to give Google the best indication of what we're talking about and everything else? Beyond maybe some of the classic answers, anything new or any developments in making sure that Google's been understanding your search terms and the terms you're targeting with a particular page?
Yeah. Can you repeat the last part?
So the question was, I wish I could know who this is and ask them exactly what they were trying to get at, but they'd asked about creating a bunch of organic content that they want to pass this 6 different ways. They want to know about optimizing it as best as possible.
Yeah.
And whether you had any recommendations for this is how we're going to do that.
Optimizing content. Yeah. I mean, I guess SEO best practices is ideal. From an IA standpoint, you're going to want to make sure that content is in the right sections, that it's tagged correctly, that it has the right internal linking structure to drive to that content. And then also from an IA standpoint, think about simple things like breadcrumbs and how breadcrumbs influence topical authority by giving the site, giving Google a clear structure for what that page is about. If you're using things like breadcrumbs, you can use structured markup like schema to help Google understand exactly what that page is about. And that includes also some of your main navigation too. You can have certain aspects of your main navigation where you're on a specific page, and that page within the navigation has like an active CSS class. So Google will know, oh, well, this is an active, this is a page that's active on this topic. Yeah.
Fantastic. Joe, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.